Welcome back to Clarkston Lighthouse Guidance. My name is Chandler Fleming. I'm the owner and lead therapist at Clarkston Lighthouse Counseling here in Clarkston, Michigan.
And I'm Victoria Fleming. I'm co-owner and therapist at Clarkston Lighthouse Counseling. Welcome to the show. Today we have a very interesting show, and it is about procrastinating.
Do we have to do it now?
I know. We thought about calling and canceling and doing it later.
I actually made the first slide, and it is supposed to be a joke for those who don't get it. See, I procrastinated.
No, you're going to finish typing it later.
I'll finish this one later, so just in case you didn't get it. So procrastination, it is something that we all do from time to time. But for some people, it becomes a really big problem. It becomes a very serious problem in their lives.
Absolutely.
It sometimes defines who somebody are, or who a person is. They're gonna turn that in late, or things along those lines. So procrastination can be a major issue in some people's lives, even though it's kind of a funny topic.
It's interesting. It made me think of hoarders and how a hoarder, it didn't start all at one time. It was just a gradual, I'll get to that tomorrow, I'll get to that tomorrow,
Sure.
I'll get to that tomorrow, and then tomorrow never actually comes, and before you know it, the house is just overcome with all the stuff that has not been done, and it becomes a hoarder house. So that's a person who has a serious problem with hoarding, or with procrastination.
And on the serious side, many people do experience like depressed mood, anxiety, sleep disturbance because they're putting things off. And some of the consequences are, they lose time, money, relationships, lots of disappointment. And the cost is sometimes quite high. So, it can be a real difficult thing. As a person who does counseling, I oftentimes wonder, what is really the cause here? What is causing this situation to take place? And so I look at anxiety, and anxiety is oftentimes a really major cause of procrastinating. And we'll talk a little bit about that in a bit. Depression can also be a cause of it. Attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, referred to as ADHD, can also be a cause. And then really just kind of a non-psychiatric diagnosis, but a lack of discipline, or even the psychiatric diagnosis of a personality disorder.
Yeah, it can become a behavior.
Yes.
That attitude of any time I can get it done, and then there's no time to get it done. And so, yeah, absolutely. I think it can become just a pattern of behavior,
right,
that has to be broken. And like you said, the cost can be very high. It can be someone who loses their job because they haven't met a deadline repeatedly.
Oh, sure. And then the health consequences. I know people who they just put off, and they're miserable. It's like, dude, get it over with and get it finished, because you're thinking about it, you're going it over in your head over and over again. So if you're going to procrastinate, at least have fun with it. At least if you're procrastinating, don't be having your mind half what you're doing and half on the project at hand. And
you mentioned the health consequences. It
Sure.
could be health consequences such as you put off going to the doctor, and then something that could have been dealt with quickly and easily perhaps becomes something far more serious.
Oh, definitely.
So it does. It can have a very high consequence. So let's look at this more deeply. What all are we looking at? I know it can take on some different forms. What are we looking at?
I looked at the different types of procrastinators, and the first group of people that I refer to is just lack of planners. A statement that I often tell people is failing to plan is planning to fail. So if you don't have a good plan, it's likely you're going to fail. The other thing is that these people intend to get it done, but they don't really get it done. They say, hey, I'm going to do better next time. But they don't have that plan in place. And then really any time becomes no time. And when I was in college, I was a procrastinator for the most part till I got married and doing my homework. But the worst part of procrastinating was the time in college where I had no job. And I really did have tons of free time. I did my assignments the latest with that job, with that situation, where I had all the time in the world. And so that's one of the things to look out for, is that when you have a ton of time on your hands, sometimes we say, well, I can do it anytime. And so it's we're going to talk about some suggestions for those sort of people.
Absolutely. Too much time
Yes.
can be a negative thing. Absolutely. So what's another kind of procrastinator?
Sure. The adrenaline craver. These people kind of get excited about the fear of not getting things done. I know one guy who procrastinating putting gas in the car, and he ran out of gas all the time, but it was kind of a game for him. It was like, this is kind of fun. If I wonder if I could get 10 more miles. And it really did. It gave him a rush. And people sometimes get hooked on it. So you got to ask yourself, am I doing this for the excitement? Am I doing this because I'm trying to make some sort of a game out of it? I think a small minority of people are anxiety cravers or adrenaline cravers, but there are some groups of people that fall into that
Absolutely.
category.
And in fact, adrenaline cravers are those people who they could leave and be on time, but they'll go ahead, and for me it'll be, oh, I'll just throw those dishes into the dishwasher, or I'm just going to throw the clothes into the dryer. And then the next thing I know, I've gone from having more than enough time to get to where I'm going to I'm in a rush, and then of course, lose the keys, and it's like, oh no, where are the keys? And then there is something about it where it's like this great rush, and it's thrilling and frustrating at the same time.
Yeah, for sure. And then the last type of procrastinator, and this is what I deal with most in my practice, is anxiety avoiders. Whatever the project is, it becomes large, and it produces anxiety. They're fearful about the results. They're fearful about how it's going to turn out. And so they put off that anxiety. They go into denial mode. They just don't think about it. Hey, I'll do it later. And that's kind of a form of denial, is just procrastinate, and put it off. Oftentimes I find that these people are perfectionists, that they can't just get it done, they got to get it done perfectly, and there really is no really no perfect. There's always some way. And it's interesting, I call these people anxiety avoiders, but also overwhelmed quitters, because a lot of these people will put themselves in a situation where they'll put it off, and they'll actually not even think about it until it's, in their mind, it's too late. Well, the high school student who puts off doing his term paper, there's no way I can get it done now, so I will just quit. And it's a way of bypassing that anxiety, so they never really have to face it. And really, when they quit, they regret having to quit, but there's some excitement to it. It's like a sense of relief that, wow, it's hopeless now, and they get some relief in quitting.
And the way I've seen that in adults is there may be a job promotion that requires some extra effort, where they have to fill out certain paperwork, or there's an interview they have to schedule and it's not done. They don't meet the paperwork deadline, they don't get the interview scheduled, and then that promotion is missed. And again, there's that sense of relief, but there's also that disappointment,
Sure.
that they've missed out on a potentially really positive outcome.
So tips to overcoming. And the first tip is really know what kind of person you are, know what type of procrastinator you are, and kind of break it down. So we have it down into the 3 categories. And so there's the lack of planners, the adrenaline cravers, and the anxiety avoiders. So know which one you are. Then for lack of planners, recognize that any time really is no time, that, hey, I can do this at any time. Does it really work for you? And then use a schedule, put it on a calendar. It is amazing the number of people I know who really don't use their phone or have a calendar or a schedule. And a lot of times they'll say, oh, I don't need to, I've got plenty of time. Also, when you put it on the schedule, break it down into small deadlines.
Absolutely. Smaller pieces. Smaller
pieces is pretty important. And then this is, I think, very important. Experience the joy of feeling like you're ahead. And that applies to a lot of them, but there's a sense of, hey, I am way ahead of my deadlines. And then reward yourself for being ahead. Make sure that it could be something fun. It could be special food, because I love food. So, you know what? When I get this, I'm not going to have that piece of cake until I do my section for the day. And then sometimes punishing yourself for being behind. Withdraw things. You know what? I'm not going to watch any TV or work on electronics or whatever until I get it done. And so it kind of forces yourself. So you got the kind of the carrot and the stick. You reward yourself, but also withhold things until you do. And then it's also really important to tell somebody of your plan. it kind of puts it on the line, and that kind of pigtails or jumps into get a partner. Sometimes when we have projects, it's really important just to find somebody to go along with you and be part of the project with you.
I agree. And what I liked about what you were talking about with using your phone is it pings. It can let you know, and so you can set up alarms that let you know, okay, I have the 30 minutes. So in 30 minutes, I'm supposed to go ahead and start working on whatever project it may be. And then even give yourself a limit on how long you're going to work on the project so that you know, there's a sense of accomplishment, and like you said, then celebrate. Then you get to have that extra cup of coffee and that donut that you've been wanting to have.
Oh, sure.
You know, so I love that because you can have a partner even with, to a certain sense, with technology. If you don't have a person, you can readily set up for that. Just utilize your phone. It will ping. It will let you know. Keep looking at it, and then set timers, and that can be very helpful.
You know, the other thing along that is really what I call the $10,000 test. If you got $10,000 to get this done on time, what would you do? How would you lay out that plan? And, you know, some things are not that important, but a lot of things really are. You know, that job promotion over the next couple of years really could pay $10,000. But so you ask yourself, hey, if I got $10,000 to get this done on time, what are the steps that I would take?
Oh, on some of those, the sense of relief I have at finally having it off my to-do list and not having to think about it, because those things clank around in your head. They're not gone.
Sure.
They're not gone, they're there. And so it can be as much as a $10,000 sense of like, ooh-hoo, got it done.
Finished.
It's finally off my list of things to do. And it is, it's very, very helpful. All right, so we've got the one who fails to plan,
Yes.
Which is planning to fail. But let's also look at the adrenaline craver. What are some tips for them?
So some tips for the adrenaline craver is remember the pain. A lot of times we remember that excitement, the joy of getting it done, but remember the pain of past things. So look back in other times that procrastination has caused difficulty.
Like running out of gas on
like
a
running out of
repeated
gas,
occurrence.
or you know, failing to make a deadline, or disappointing a loved one.
Or getting a speeding ticket because you went ahead and put the dishes in the dishwasher instead of going ahead and getting out the door and being there earlier on time.
Yeah.
That's painful.
Yeah, it definitely is. And then really find other things. There are better things to give you pleasure besides seeing when you can run out of gas. Develop healthy ways of getting excitement. Do something brave. And sometimes doing something brave can be as simple as volunteering to do something, or mentor somebody, or something really positive that's kind of scary for you to do.
And it's funny because it could even be a more rapid pleasure. It could be a pleasure that if I leave early, I actually have time to drive through Starbucks. Can you tell I like coffee, a lot of coffee? You know, if I don't run out of gas, then I don't have to deal with the extra hassle, and I can go ahead and, you know, run into the mart that's attached to the gas station and reward myself immediately because woohoo, I didn't run out of gas. I actually got gas before it was empty. You know, so find a way to reward, and then that is a different a sensation of pleasure that replaces the need for the adrenaline.
Yep.
You know, important.
And as she said, like running into the gas station could be the experience of the joy of being ahead. Reward yourself for being ahead, punish those things that you don't. And then monitor your mood, because what I find a lot with adrenaline junkies is that it's their way of kind of picking themselves up, especially depressed. They kind of feel mopey or down, or they just kind of have the blahs. So monitor your mood and address your mood issues, because a lot of times people who are adrenaline junkie procrastinators, they have some underlying depression that they just don't deal with.
Right.
And
so they actually want positive endorphins rather than adrenaline, but they're doing something that gives them the adrenaline instead of the endorphins.
Oh, sure.
You know, so, and that can be things like exercise and going out with a friend. Laughter is so important, you know, so just listening to a comedian, but finding some ways.
Yeah. So those are our tips for people who are
adrenaline cravers.
Adrenaline cravers. The last one, and I think it's the most serious one, is the anxiety avoiders, and then the overwhelm quitters that kind of go hand in hand. For those people, it's important to have a rough schedule. So a lot of times being overly scheduled and overly detailed works against them, because they get a tiny bit behind, and that just feeds their being overwhelmed. So have a rough outline. have a general idea of where you need to be. Break it into small pieces, and then force yourself to work on it on a daily basis. So you know what your goal is for that day, get a little bit done. Remember,
you will have to do it sometime.
yeah, that you'll have to do it sometime.
Absolutely.
A lot of people, you know, hey, I'll just fail my English class. Well, you know, why are you going to fail your English class?
You're going to have to take it again.
You're going to have to take it again. And you're going to have to learn material again. I had a client where algebra was their thing. And they said, you know, why bother? I'm just going to fail this time. Well, that probably was true. They probably were going to fail. But if they worked on it, it'd be a lot easier to take it next year, their senior year. And then
you don't always have to be in the mood. Sometimes it's just like you just have to push through. You just have to say, you know, it's that fake it till you make it.
Yes.
All right, I may not be in the mood, but you can do some things. Put on the music that kind of hypes you up or brings on a more positive mood. Light a candle while you're doing, you know, sip your favorite coffee. But do some things to create the mood, even if you're not in the mood, just to help you. You know, and then do recognize the benefits of trying.
Yeah.
I know a method that I've
Practice makes
used
perfect.
with a lot of people is use the grid system. I've had some people who, let's say their basement was just overwhelming. I had a friend that years ago, and so we went down into her basement and we set it up like a grid.
Oh,
I mean, a
cool.
literal grid, and it was like, okay, girlfriend, what you're gonna do is you're gonna start in that corner. And they gave her an ability to then move, you know, kind of move it forward, but start in the very back corner, here are the stairs, and then just keep doing a portion of the grid a day.
Oh, cool.
And then I asked her, I said, how many days do you think this would actually take? And it was probably going to take a month, you know, but I said, then all your kids, she had a lot of kids, you know, can come downstairs and use this space, Think, Mom, think of the sanity you'd have if your kids could go downstairs and use the space, you know, so that grid system, you know, so she did. She'd get the music on, she'd rock out, and she'd have her, you know, maybe a favorite candle burning, so she had that nice smell, and she did. She started grid, you know, portion by portion of the grid, knocked out that basement.
Awesome. Also remember that great is the enemy of good. And what I mean by that is so many times people get things done in a really good fashion and then they throw it out. They want something better. I had some clients that, using academic examples again, that they would write a term paper, throw it away because it wasn't good enough. So recognize that, get it done good the first time, get it done okay the first time, and then you can tweak it later. Don't get stuck. Keep doing it, and there's always a second or third write, but get the first version done and then go back before you start your rewrites.
Absolutely. And in fact, that's one of those where artistic people, professors, English teachers will say, just do it, get it out, you know, write, free flow write, and then after you've got it all out, after you've poured out, then go back and start kind of tweaking it. And again, that looks at the scaling and the kind of the grid of just portion by portion, paragraph by paragraph.
Sure.
Take a look at it and start fixing it. But the first time, just do it, get it done.
And scaling is important because a lot of things that anxiety says, this is absolutely horrible. I've got to write an English paper. This is absolutely horrible. What if I don't get the job? You know, and both those things in the long run are not huge. So in proportion to other things, on the scale, it's a 5 or a 6 on a 10 scale, and maybe even lower than that. So sometimes we can reduce our anxiety by putting it on a scale. And then the last technique that I talk about is a technique I call walk through the doors backwards. Some people, the idea of walking towards something is just too overwhelming. The basement is too dirty. The ability to graduate from college, you know, maybe I'm not smart enough. So what you do through walking through the door backwards is you kind of occasionally kind of look at where you want to go and what the direction is, but you just keep walking where you think, and you don't focus on the finish line, you focus on moving in that direction. And then one day you discover, wow, the basement's clean. Wow, I've got my college degree. So you don't really focus on the goal, you focus on moving towards the goal and only peek at it every once in a while.
Wow, and wow, I may not have gotten the promotion, but I learned some skills in striving for the promotion. You know, I think it's interesting, another situation I had was where a woman had just so much in her main living space to even function. So what we did is we got it all heaped in a safe place.
Yep.
And then we put a really beautiful blanket over top of it, so that in her day-to-day, it wasn't so overwhelming. There was this beautiful quilt over top of it, so a little bit looking at it backwards, you know, because now it's just a rather mountainous heap. But then just day by day, she'd peel back and she'd put a little bit up, you know, and that's what we have to do. And that's what you do with the term paper, that's what you do with the job promotion, and that's what you do with any project. So like you said, there's some overlap for sure, but you don't want to procrastinate your life away.
So, in conclusion, many people do suffer from extreme procrastination, and the cost can be quite high. And it is important to look at what is the contributing cause underneath. Is there anxiety? Is there depression? Do you have attention deficit disorder where you just have a really hard time focusing? And we're diagnosing that more and more in adults. And then really use the tips that best match the problem. Know what kind of procrastinator you may be. And then the last thing is get professional help if you need it, and don't put it off.
And I just wanted to touch real quickly before we do. On the list was contributing causes. Look for the contributing causes. What would be some contributing causes to procrastinating?
You know, I think a lot of things. There's anxiety, depression, ADHD, some personality issues.
Okay.
Also just the way you were raised, bad habits. Those are all contributing causes.
So can you see I'm procrastinating ending the show?
Yes, you are.
So don't put it off.
Don't put it off.
Have a wonderful day. Thank you so much for joining us. And if you have any ideas of topics you'd like us to cover, please feel free to call us at 248-245-1809. And again, that was 248-245-1809. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful day.
The views expressed in this show are for general educational purposes only and do not constitute professional advice on any subject matter, nor do they necessarily reflect the views or opinions of its guests or of Independence Television. If mental health assistance is needed, please seek professional licensed treatment.